Thanks, Admiral. Just to follow on Weeja's previous question, though, we've learned, according to an Israeli source, that Netanyahu was quite surprised by the president's comments about his expectations that there would be a ceasefire by Monday. So that doesn't bode a lot of optimism that one of the key parties was surprised by that timeline the president had set. So why did he say Monday?
I can't speak for the surprise that foreign leaders have or don't have with regard to things that we're saying. The president talked to y'all after staying completely up to speed, and he has been kept up to speed on how these negotiations are going, and he shared with you some context, and he certainly shared with you his optimism that we can get there in hopefully short order. But he also said, you know, it's not all done yet, and you don't have a deal until you have a deal. We don't have one right now. So the team is still working at this very, very hard, as I said in my opening statement, around the clock. But we believe that we are getting closer. And while we don't want to sound too sanguine or Pollyannish about it, we do think that there's been some serious negotiations.
And after Speaker Johnson's meeting with the president, it doesn't really sound like he's changed his mind on Ukraine. He again reiterated that the border needs to be addressed before Ukraine. So given this current trajectory, what does that mean for Ukraine and its battlefield needs?
I'd also point to what he said about, you know, taking up the issue of Ukraine funding in a timely fashion. He said that right out there outside the West Wing. And we know that he does support funding for Ukraine. He said so himself. We know that the significant House leadership, and certainly on both sides of the aisle in the House, support funding for Ukraine. Now the question is, when you say a timely fashion, what do you mean by that? I can tell you, to the Ukrainian soldier on the battlefront, timeliness is now. It's right now. As you and I just came back from the weekend, the Russians started taking some other towns and villages. Now they didn't, nothing to the significance of Avdiivka in terms of the logistics hub that they want to create there. But they're on the move. This is not some frozen conflict. And so we urge the speaker, when he says a timely fashion, that he actually lives up to that, because again, to the Ukrainian soldier, the time is right now.
What's the significance of trying to get a hostage deal in place before Ramadan starts on March 10th?
What we're focused on, Steve, is getting this deal in place as soon as we can. And you heard from the president. I mean, we're hopeful that this can happen in coming days. And if that does, if we are able to get the pause in place and the hostages out in a relatively short order, then clearly an extended pause, as I was talking to Kelly about, would certainly take you into Ramadan. But right now, it's not about trying to beat the clock to Ramadan. It's about trying to get these two sides to come to closure on a deal that, again, would get all those hostages out and get the fighting stopped.
Separately, we took note of the remarks by the French president today of the possibility of sending French troops to Ukraine. How would the United States regard any NATO ally sending troops to Ukraine?
Well, that's a sovereign decision that every NATO ally would have to make for themselves. You heard Secretary General Stoltenberg say himself he had no plans or intentions of certainly under NATO auspices, of putting troops on the ground, and President Biden has been crystal clear since the beginning of this conflict. There will be no U.S. troops on the ground in a combat role there in Ukraine.